So we can get started. All right, I'm hitting record on the webinar. We will post a recording of this on our website. Um, and if you have any questions for the presenter, go ahead and start adding them to the Q&A, and we will be sure to save some time at the end so we can answer your specific questions. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce Laura Rusniak from the TAO chapter at University of South Florida College of Public Health. So thank you, Laura.
Wonderful. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to share this presentation and talk about a really important topic that everybody has an interest in, whether we feel comfortable about it. A lot of times people don't feel comfortable about this topic. So I'm the director of undergraduate programs at the College of Public Health at University of South Florida. So joining you from Tampa. So what I'm going to do is dive right in, and I have an activity, so I'm hoping this works. So if you are able to take out your phones and please scan this QR code. And if it says anything about registering, just skip that. Any information, you can just skip that. And it's working for me, and hopefully it's working for everybody. And I would like you to please enter what you think a mistake might be with salary negotiation. We're going to cover a lot, and we're going to talk about what people are perhaps fearful about. And sometimes people are worried about making mistakes when it comes to salary negotiation. So what would you say is the biggest mistake? And Allison, do you mind scanning that and seeing if you're the only one I can see? I don't know if anybody can pop into the chat if it's working.
Yep, it's working.
Okay, good. So please, and you can put in as many responses as possible. I do come from a health educator background. So of course, with health education, you want to see what's coming from your community first, and you all are my community with this. So please type in what you think might be salary negotiation mistakes. And dare I say it, maybe you think one might be the biggest one to make. Okay, hopefully you all have had a chance. There's going to be one more of these, but let me see what you all said. Okay, great. So people think the biggest mistake, going too low, asking for too much or too little. You know, what's normal? Love that with salary negotiation. Oops. Here we go. I just need to toggle through here. Not having justification for asking more. Okay, good. Settling too early, not pushing back, being seen as greedy. Okay. So you say your salary first. Very nice. Very nice. Not knowing the market value. Low balling. We're going to talk about low balling. Great. Okay. Unprepared to sell yourself. Not after this. You were in the right place. Fear, right? Not having justification. Okay. Not having a clear ask. Okay. Being too modest and not asking for enough. Absolutely. And I love that the first response is, here we go, not doing it, not negotiating at all. And I will tell you, when you talk about salary negotiation, the most important thing to wrap your brain around is making sure that you do it. The biggest mistake, and sometimes people do not negotiate salary because they're afraid of making a mistake, but the biggest mistake you could make is not doing it. And that can be very difficult for people to wrap their brains around, depending on their background. Talking about money can be fraught for many reasons, cultural and individual and family. I didn't tell my family members I'm doing this. I'm pretty sure they'd be embarrassed to know that I'm speaking on a national stage about asking for money, because that's what I grew up with. So there could be a lot of weirdness about salary negotiation. Not after today. Not anymore. We're going to process through it, right? But we have to acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge the barriers before we can have a productive discussion, right? So There's making mistakes in life, but the biggest mistake you can make is not doing it. Okay, so the struggle is real. If those of you who said intimidation and fear and being afraid, the struggle is real. And when you look at statistics, I know this is very binary with, just male and female. It's research based. So most of the research does do evidence in kind of a more binary way. But we do see fear is there. Women and men admit to being too scared to negotiate salary. So women feel perhaps more intimidated, and we could have an entire discussion about why that is the case, culturally speaking. But men do as well, right? So everybody is feeling this, right? It's not, one or the other. It is real. And some people feel incredibly confident doing that. These people are probably not here because I can't tell you anything that you don't already know if that is your personality and your experience. But for many of us, dare I say, a chunk of the majority, it is intimidating. And so you can realize that it's intimidating, and we're going to move past that. So why? Okay. Let's now talk about why this is. Okay, I might have to scooch here. Okay, good. So this should, okay, so register, say skip for now if you get that. So this should be popping up on your phone automatically. If not, go ahead and scan that QR code. If you didn't realize how fun this was going to be, go ahead, scan the QR code, and let's talk about fears. Why do you think people are afraid to negotiate salary? And what do you think it is that they're afraid of, right? So there is fear, but what is it that they are ultimately afraid of in this process? Okay, being rejected, appearing too greedy. Yep, scared of losing the job. That is a huge one, right? That they might rescind the job. Absolutely. It will impact whether they want to hire you, whether you'll be a prospect. That's right. To be rejected. And the first one, I don't know what to ask for. And that's scary as well. So there's knowledge here. Seeming hard to work with, right? If you try to negotiate your salary, you're going to be a difficult person to work with. You're starting off on the wrong foot already from the get-go. Maybe they're thinking badly about you, that bad impression, right? Greed is huge. And that rejection has already come up twice in what this has been, maybe 45 seconds, right? Right? Lots of looking needy, losing the job, fear of losing the opportunity. Wow, that's huge. That's huge. Okay, so the fear is there, right? So you all acknowledge it. It is there. Oh, getting a lower salary. So if you ask for more, not only will they not give you more, but they'll give you less, right? So if we haven't engaged in this before, we don't even know what it looks like, right? I love this one. Public health is supposed to be for the greater good, not for personal wealth, right? And so the salary negotiation fears are real. Somebody's going to get mad. They're going to think, how dare you? What do you want? They might rescind the offer. We were going to hire you, but now we're not going to, or you're going to be seen as greedy, a shark. And in public health, that's not what we're here for, right? These are all there, but this never happens, right? And if you have never negotiated for salary, it can feel, like this can occur. But unless somebody has never hired somebody before, this is not their first rodeo. The hiring manager has done this many, many times. You are not the first person they've offered a job to. You're not the first person that they've negotiated salary. For many of us, especially early career, it feels like the first time we're doing it because it feels weird to us. But you have to move past the fear because what's on the other side is certainly worth it. So I have never heard of this happening. Take a job being taken back. It virtually never happens if people do it right and they do it at the right time, which we're going to talk about. So it just virtually never happens that people, are engaging in the job process and then they take the job away. You ask for more money. Well, no, thanks. We don't want to hire you. It It never happened. It never happens. It seems strange that that's the case, but I've just never heard of it in my 25 years of being in the field of public health. And there's lots of different types of employers that we've talked about, right? And I think there's growing awareness that people do see you're providing for yourself. You're not a shark. You're not greedy. In public health, we are many things, but we are not greedy folks, right? So knowing that those fears are there, but they are not based in reality. Asking for more money for a job will not make you appear greedy. We're going to talk about how to do that as well, which will help you feel confident. But the confidence is the important part. And they're not going to be surprised. If you ask for more money, that is the game. It's new for you as the job seeker, but it is not new for the hiring person. You are one of hundreds of people who have asked for more money, right? So it's just putting it in perspective, especially for new people. It's not weird. They're not going to rescind the job offer. They're not going to think you're greedy or difficult. Those things don't happen, but the fear is real for people, right? And it prevents people from engaging in this behavior. So you have to sort of process, you have to move through things to be able to get there. And now we're going to talk about why it's so important. So this I got from salary.com, which, I really like. We're going to talk about different resources. So we see a person, Jane, who has made a job offer, $45,000. She doesn't, get tens of thousands of dollars more. She's not asking for six figures, but she's able to negotiate $5,000 more. Right? So it's not, you're not buying a boat with it, but it's money. Jim, very excited, takes the job. They offer it and he takes it. And so that is their initial job offer. And sometimes people think, well, if I don't negotiate in the beginning, it'll be all right. I'll make up for it later. And then you can see in this description, Jane receives a 1% raise yearly, which is the same for Jim, but every third year she negotiates just 3% more, right? So this is something that follows people throughout their careers. And there's many reasons why women earn less money than men. There's mentorship, there's glass ceilings, there's lots of different factors. One factor that does have an impact is failure to negotiate your first salary, because it is important for your entire life earnings. And so if you're thinking, I didn't, my life is over, it is not. But it is something to consider for people who are going out into the field. And salary negotiation isn't just for that first job. It's during job interviews and it's during performance evaluations. So this is a skill that's important to take with you. You can see the small difference, $5,000. It comes out, look at the bottom, over the course of Jim's career, he will miss out on over $1 million in wages, right? Very important. So having a mindset of this is what people do, I can do this. Maybe I feel fearful and strange about it, but this is important to do. $1 million, I don't need to tell you what you can do with $1 million of life earnings, right? It's very, very important for all of us to be thinking about our careers and our projections. So this is important to keep in mind. And the goal of salary negotiation, you're not trying to bankrupt anybody. You're not trying to make the business go out of business so that everybody loses their job. You are looking for a win-win situation for the long-term relationship, because people who don't have equitable salaries and they don't have salaries that they're happy with don't tend to be as good workers. And if you are a happy worker, you are providing for your organization. So I almost thought about having a meme, help me, help you. Jerry Maguire, remember that? Help me, help you. Help them, help you by asking for more money, right? And if you get there and you work in a place, maybe you've experienced this. It always comes out. It always comes out. Who's making what? And you realize that you're making less than somebody else. Maybe they don't even work as hard as you do, but they asked for more money, so they got it, right? And then You feel upset. You feel like you're not appreciated. That feels unfair. So help your employer. They want you to stay. People who get a job and then just leave because they're unhappy with the salary are not doing employers any favors either, right? So help your employer keep you, hopefully, for the long term. And a good salary is a good way to do that, right? So it's not greedy. It is not trying to bankrupt them. You are helping for them to keep you because they've already invested in you. When they are going through the job seeking process, it costs money. HR people, they have to review resumes, they have to set up interviews. All of that takes time, and time is money. They've already invested in you. So they want you to stay. They don't want you to get upset and leave. So negotiating salary is part of how you have a long-term relationship with your employer, right? So you're doing yourself a favor, you're doing the employer a favor as well, which is not how we typically think about salary negotiation, but that's why you're here, to maybe be thinking about things a little bit differently. All right, so there are multiple principles of salary negotiation. Now that we know, we don't need to be afraid of it, right? And we know we need to do this. This is a must, right? So we've gotten there. How do we do it? There are a couple different principles. Timing, just like so much in life, timing is everything. And knowing what you should be asking for. And you all talked about the knowing. Well, maybe people don't do it because they don't know what they should be asking for. So that's where we're going to start. Salary factors to consider. Now, you do have to take a couple of things into thought process of salary negotiation, the field or the industry. Now, sometimes people are like, well, public health, we're service oriented. You can't negotiate salary. That's for business folks, right? They can negotiate, but public health, we can't negotiate. Not true. And I know at least one of my old students is here on the call. As my old students will tell you, I have guest speakers, and they all, from many different areas of public health, talk about the importance of salary negotiation. Yes, you can and you should be negotiating salary within the field of public health. So that doesn't mean to say that you can't negotiate within public health. Just because something is a service sector doesn't mean that you should not be negotiating your salary. You just have to know your geographic region, right? So people in some parts of the country are going to need to get paid more than others because of cost of living. It's doing your research. It's really knowing what somebody is getting paid for that job in your area. You don't want to quote a different area because that makes you look ill-informed when you come to the table, right? So you're doing your research and you are finding out your geographic region. Organization, it is going to look different for government jobs versus nonprofit versus for-profit, but you should still negotiate salary at nonprofit organizations, government jobs, and of course for-profit. But people think, well, you can't negotiate with the government. That is not true. I am a state worker and I've seen it happen so many times. So many times people say, well, this is the number, and you move forward in the hiring process, and people are like, well, you know what? We really want this candidate, and they were talking to us, so we were able to find the money. Found the money. Was it in a file folder? What was it? Salary negotiation is part of the process for many organizations. How you negotiate salary for the federal government is going to be different than the state government, and that's going to be different than for-profit. But that doesn't mean that organizations do not allow it, right? It still can happen. And I always share this experience at a nonprofit. A person who ran a nonprofit in public health in my area, and she had a new person. This was for a year annual evaluation. She brought her in and she wanted to give her a raise for her annual evaluation, her first year on the job. But the employee had to ask for it. She couldn't offer it without the employee first asking. And so she tried to get her, that you did a great job. These are all the things. What are your concerns? How do you feel? And then she's like, okay, do you have any questions? And the employee said, no, no questions. She was like, are you sure? Nothing? Nope. She could not offer somebody the money without her asking first. And She explained this to her later. She was like, I can't do it now. I am constrained by what I need to do. But just because we're a nonprofit doesn't mean you can't negotiate your salary. So if you have preconceptions, and I know I did, about being able to negotiate within different organizations, try to rethink those, because I've seen it happen on all different organizations and different layers. Now, there are different types of jobs, of course, entry level, management, executive, and you can negotiate for entry level positions. People might say, oh, well, for entry level, people can't get more money there, but that's not the case. You can. And trying to negotiate, as we're going to talk, doesn't mean you always get money, but that doesn't mean you don't attempt, right? And people are shocked to know how much money that they were able to get and they didn't think they'd be able to, right? So despite all of these factors, you need to be thinking that salary negotiation is what you are going to be doing despite the variability here, right? And that's not always what people talk about when they talk about jobs and being new in the field, but it's very important to understand. Okay, so you are going to be doing your research. You need to come to the negotiating table with information on your side. And I recommend going through multiple of these places where you can find really great information. You've probably heard about some of them: Glassdoor, salary.com. The OOH, Occupational Outlook Handbook, is good for overall, although it's federal. So you might not be able to get more detailed information about your region. So you don't want to just stop with one. Look at multiple places for salary information, and then you're putting all that information together to have an educated background, right? PayScale, Indeed, Salary Expert, JobStar, Vault, LinkedIn, Career Blitz. I really like this Educate to Career because it allows you to really dive into what your degree is, how many years of experience, what's the job title, what's the state, what's the city. So it really lets you dive deep into some salary information. So the big thing is coming to the table with research, and don't just rely on one place. You don't want to say, well, I saw on Glassdoor that an infection preventionist should be getting this much. You want to have research from multiple sources. Okay, but online research is one thing. Now I'm going to talk about talking to people about money. And again, I know this can be weird. And this is not asking people, how much money do you make? Because of course you would never ask that, right? That is rude. But asking people, do you know what entry-level positions at X, Y, and Z usually start at? Do you know what infection preventionists or environmental specialists make at this organization? So trying to connect with people. This can feel weird. Again, you're not asking them about their salary. You're asking them about salaries. If they happen to know, you'd be surprised how much people know about this. So employees, former and current, network with friends, family, colleagues, professors, informational interviews. And it can be a rich source of information. And it feels weird to talk about money to people that maybe you don't know that well. But trust me, when you are asking these questions, they are thinking, that is so smart that they are asking, and I wish I would have asked. So many people wish they could go back in time and negotiate salary when they had the chance. Also, professional organizations are a treasure trove. They have membership surveys where they ask people, what's your position? How much money do you make? And this information is just sitting there for you to be able to better understand what people are making in this arena, right? So research is online and research is also with people. And it can be incredibly helpful to get some perspective from people who are in the organization, have worked with the organization, have some feedback. Okay, so that's the information. Timing is everything. You postpone the discussion as much as possible. And I know this sounds a little disingenuous. It sounds evasive, and it is. And that's just how the game is played. And if you've never negotiated salary, you just haven't done it. Anybody else who's done it, and I'm telling you, your hiring manager has been around, they know this isn't their first rodeo. They know how this goes. Because when you try to negotiate salary too soon, you could price yourself out. Some of the fears that people said about, like, oh, well, maybe I'll ask for too much and then I won't be the selected candidate. They'll go with somebody else. That could happen if you do it too soon. So as you can see here, your bargaining position is more once they know you better. So you wait to have this discussion. And sometimes people want to know the salary early. You don't have that discussion, right? Because they don't know who you are. You want them to think, oh, we like you. We love you. You want them out of the palm of your hand, right? We must have you. That's the best time. And there's a lot of power in being the selected candidate. When you've interviewed people, you've looked at all the resumes, it's exhausting. You've done all the interviews, more exhausting. You've had the discussions, you've talked about people, you know in your mind who you want to hire. That is when you have the most leverage. And again, you're not doing this to be a shark. You're doing this to maximize, help me help you, to help them, right? You look at when you have the most leverage. And when they know they want you, that is when you have the most leverage. And you don't negotiate until then. You wait until leverage is on your side. And it's like a staring contest. Right? Who loses a staring contest? The first person to look away. Who loses the salary negotiation is the first person who brings it up. So you're not talking about it. You're not talking about salary negotiation. Now, this can feel very weird, and you're not trying to be problematic, but you are just trying to wait to have this conversation. So when people say, if they have part of their, honestly, salary hasn't been discussed until later in many of the jobs that I have interviewed for. But if they happen to be an organization where they, kind of front load those conversations, delay tactics would be, if they say, what salary you are hoping to get, you can say, honestly, my salary requirements are negotiable. And the important part about delaying is stopping and smiling. And they know what's happening, right? And they're not like, what is this difficult person doing? They're thinking, all right, she watched the webinar. She knows. All right, okay. Delay tactics. I'm confident that you offer a competitive salary based on fair market value. You stop and you wait, right? So you're saying, I don't want to talk about this in a nicer way. And you are not the first person to do this. This is what is done. It's the script that sometimes people don't know. And when you know, you follow it. You can do any combination of these. Honestly, before we talk salary, I'd like to hear more about the position, if that's okay with you, right? I'd like to discuss how my background fits your needs before discussing compensation. And a lot of times, okay, right? People probably know what you're doing. So they're like, oh, okay, that sounds fine. And they move on to the next question, right? So this feels strange, just like anything you do irregularly, but it feels less strange the more that you do it. So it's just having the verbiage in your pocket to pull out, because you don't want to talk about it yet, right? You are waiting. Okay, and I love this wink and Lincoln. Sometimes, you can be like a politician, not really answering the question, but answering with a question. So you could ask. So when they say, what are your salary requirements? You can say, oh, well, what is the salary range you're considering for this position? And if you have somebody who gives you a salary range, that is incredibly helpful information. Right? You may not know the salary range. It might not be listed on the job. So you can ask them. And if you get a range, you can work with a range, right? That gives you more leverage as well. Or you could ask them, what figure did you have in mind? And they might have, well, we have this in mind. And then you don't confirm it. You say, well, I'm sure we can come up with a number that works with both of us if I'm offered the position, right? But getting the number is incredibly helpful. And sometimes people don't know. I don't have to ask the question, answer the question. I can ask a question in response. Yes. And they probably know what you're doing and they probably respect you more for it. They know you know your stuff. And that's a good thing. What qualifications would a person with my skills and qualifications, what would a person with my skills and qualifications typically earn in this position? Right. So it's different ways to ask them early on. This is early on in the job process, and you are trying to get that information as much as possible. Okay, so if you have to answer. Now, the thing about timing is you do want to wait. You want to wait until they offer you the job. That is the moment that you press play, and that's when it begins. You want to wait until that moment, though. But if you have to answer, sometimes you get to a point and the person is not the hiring manager, or it's, the first interview and it's HR and they're like, listen, I get it. Like, good job. You watched the webinar. But I have to write something down on my form. I'm going to need a number for you. You give a range. You have hopefully done your research before this point. And so you use your research to give a range as best as you can. And of course, you want your range to be on the upper end of their range, right? You don't want to have it so high that you price yourself out. Because if they're hiring other people and they're like, listen, I liked them too, but they'd never stay because they asked for too much money before they offered you the job, right? Once they've offered you the job is when you have the most leverage. So if you're forced to talk about it before they offer you the job, you go with a range. And that is when your research comes into play. Okay, so now is the moment. This is the moment you've been waiting for. You're offered the job. Express pleasure at receiving the job offer and enthusiasm. Hopefully you don't have to fake it. Hopefully this is a job you want. Sometimes people get so excited, they just, yes, accept the job and the salary. And then they hang up and they're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Oh no. They want to go back in time. Not you, not anymore, because you're here, right? So you're prepared. You get the email or the call, they offer you the job. Now, definitely sound happy to get this job. Sometimes people are like, game face, grrr. Don't make it seem like you're tough. You can negotiate with a smile on your face and happiness for this job. Both of those things should happen together, right? So don't get into like negotiation mode. In that way, be happy. Thank you so much. I'm so excited about this opportunity. That's how people want job applicants to respond. That is going to be how you feel. Let that shine through. That is fine. Clarify any aspects if necessary, when you're going to start, dates, right? When there's training, all those things. And then once they offer you the job, you're excited. When you're going to start, all that. Now we talk salary. Ask if there's any flexibility in the salary, right? And so for some jobs, this is going to happen over email. For some government positions, they have to do it. It has to be very official. That can be nice because you have time to think about it, maybe get some advice. Sometimes it's you on the phone and you have to do it on the spot. So just be prepared. You ask if there's flexibility in the salary. You give justification. And their justification is not, well, I have student loans. It's going to cost me money to move there. The cost of living. I have credit card debt. None of this is the justification. Of course, we have it in our minds, right? As job seekers, that's our reality. That's not what we tell them. What we tell them is what we bring to the table. Skills, experience. You know what they liked about you in the interview. Certain skills, and people were writing notes and then they looked up and they were like, that's when you use that. That's your leverage. You think about what they really liked that you said, and that's what you talk about. Your skills and experience, that is your justification. What you bring to the table. Oh, you are going to make their lives easier as employers. And of course, counteroffer higher that you're willing to accept, right? So if you really want 60,000, you don't ask for 60,000, you ask for 70,000. right? Or maybe an odd number, 67,522. Some negotiators say to use kind of strange numbers like that because it sticks in their heads and it makes them you look like you've done your research. Whatever your feelings are about that, right? So you counter offer higher than you're willing to accept. So you can come down and meet in the middle. That's what you want to do. So if this is what you want, this is what you ask for. Okay. Okay, so, and this can, again, be really strange. How do I put that into words? So here's just a script that can be really helpful. They've offered you the job. I'm extremely excited about your job offer. I would love to join your team and use my skills to benefit your organization. However, I'm hoping we can discuss the current salary offer. I've conducted some research on salary for a similar position in this area, and based on my educational background, as well as my field experience, I'm hoping for a salary range of between 55 to 60,000. Please let me know if you can help me with this. And you stop. The power of silence. Right? And unlike other things in life, you don't stop with the first no. They might say, no, I'm so sorry. We can't offer you a higher salary. You don't stop. You dog it a little bit. It's expected, especially if you're working in the for-profit world, anything businessy, it's expected that people are going to negotiate salary. And you dog it a little. If they say no, you say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. I am really excited about this opportunity. I'm really hoping we can work something out. Is there anyone I could speak to about it? And then you stop, right? And then if you're speaking to someone at HR, they might be like, they told me this is the salary. I guess I could ask the hiring manager, right? And so you could say, that would be wonderful. I really appreciate any help you could give in this matter, right? You dog it a little bit. You don't stop after the first one. You try to keep going. And I'm not saying that it will always work. I am saying it will always be worth it to ask. And again, as long as you do it at the right time, nobody's going to say, no, you can't have more money. And by the way, you can't have this job. It doesn't happen. When you are the chosen profession, the job applicant, you're the top applicant, they offer you the job, it's expected that you're going to ask for more money. It's expected you're going to go back and forth. Even if they can't give you more money, they know people are going to ask. And as long as you don't get rude or aggressive, assertive is different than aggressive. Assertive is a smile on your face and you're dogging it. Aggressive is being rude, right? Okay. So they've offered you the job. You asked for more money. You dogged it. You went back and forth a few times, right? If you can't get anywhere with money, and sometimes that does happen, again, you always ask. I'm not saying you don't ask. You always ask. But sometimes they really can't offer you more money. Maybe they're hiring multiple people. Maybe it's at a certain GS pay scale, if we're talking about the federal, right? This is it. This is the money, and that's it. We can't do any more. We're not hiring at another GS pay scale. This is it. Then you can consider negotiating other aspects of the benefits package, which we're going to talk about. If you honestly are not sure if you could afford to take this job, you can take some time, but don't take more than 24 hours. If you say you're going to get back to them by 4 p.m., they could offer the job to the next candidate at 4:01. So make sure you get back to them within 24 hours. So there can be circumstances where you cannot budge with money, right? You cannot budge with salary. That doesn't mean you aren't able to get other factors. And thinking like an employer, they are spending a lot probably for a salaried employee on other aspects. They're paying for your health care. They're perhaps contributing to retirement, payroll taxes. Benefits can equal a chunk of your total compensation package. So they're not just paying you a salary. They are paying for you as an employee in different ways, right? And so asking about these things, performance-based raises. If the first salary isn't great, but you're like, well, the performance-based raises actually aren't that bad. It might be worth it to hang in there for a year, and then your salary grows quickly. There are some organizations where the first salary is met, but it actually grows pretty stinking fast. That is important to know. Vacation time is a really great way where people can get some extra. And I don't need to tell you how much 1 or 2 weeks. I've known people who work at nonprofits, and at the time they couldn't get more money, but they got 2 weeks more paid vacation. And it was worth a lot to them with their quality of life. So they had total 4 weeks paid vacation. It can be an incredible value to you. So thinking about other things, depending on the job. For my job, I can't negotiate that. It's just not how it works with my certain type of government position, but that doesn't mean that's not the case. Do your research beforehand, know what you can negotiate beforehand if you are not able to do salary. And again, I'm saying you don't not ask for salary, you always ask, but you also know what you might want to ask for after that. Timely advancement, bonuses, flexible schedule can save you a lot of money if you're not going into the office, certain days of week, every other Friday, what have you. Retirement packages, healthcare insurance. I don't need to tell this group how much that is worth. For profit, people stock options. Does that exist in public health? Yes, it does. For certain organizations, sure does. So asking about those for profit organizations, of course. Education rebates. Getting an advanced degree costs a lot of money. If you can have an employer help you pay for that or pay for it completely, that's tens of thousands of dollars worth of money. And that's part of your compensation package. You need to know about this. Are there cost of living raises? Are they paying for parking, company car, like a technology bonus, cell phone, childcare? Incredibly expensive. So any help there, parental leave can be huge. And these are things you're not asking about during the interview process. You don't ask about these things during the interview, but you are doing your research on your own because this information can be found on most company websites, right? And relocation costs. I know a student who was able to negotiate for an internship, but it was for a healthcare for-profit organization, which is a great fit for public health, relocation costs for an internship. And she got there and none of the other interns had gotten any relocation funding. And they said, how did you get that? And she said, I asked, and they said yes, right? So it's knowing what to ask for. That's incredibly important. And I encourage you, as Rosie the Riveter, we can do it. You can do this. It can be very difficult for many different reasons, but with a few key strategies and knowledge that you've gained on your own, you can negotiate. You should negotiate. You will negotiate salary because it's just too important not to. Thank you so much for letting me talk about this. As you can tell, I love it. It's so important for people, especially those of us who serve others, to be doing and to keep in our mindset as well as we're helping others.
That was just terrific. I wish I would have talked to you when I was starting out in my career. We do have some questions, so it looks like we've got a little bit of time. So let's go ahead and take those questions. And if those of you on the presentation today have others, just go ahead and put them in the Q&A. Laura, can you see them or do you want me to read them to you?
Okay, I think, yes, I think I see them. Okay. Okay. Ooh, grant funded positions negotiable. Okay. In the past, attempted to negotiate salary, informed that it was impossible. Yeah, I think it does. It does depend. So the thing is, I am so glad, Ashley Kay, that you asked because you do not know unless you ask. So the answer might be no. And you want to trust them on that, right? So if there are soft money positions, that may not be possible, but that doesn't mean you're not asking about Do they, if it's multiple years, which often it is, are there performance-based raises? How do annual evaluations work? So asking about those other things are very, very important as well. So I hate to say it, but it does depend, but you do ask. I'm so glad you asked. Okay, does that include asking for raises at the
There are
time?
a whole bunch of questions in the Q&A too, so.
Oh, am I not? Okay.
Well,
Do you want
you're in the
to?
chat. It's all good. Let's just get through as many as we can. Maybe we could alternate a bit.
Right. Okay. And if you want to, you can hop in. So yes, at the time of evaluation is a great time to ask for raises. Again, you may not know if that's possible, but you will not know unless you ask. Okay. And maybe I'll shoot it to you, Allison, and you can tell me if there's a couple of different people asking the same thing, and then I'll search for, we can go back and forth.
Yeah. Well, so there's two, I think that I'm seeing. Um, One is how large of a range do you recommend ask or stating? How big should that
Right.
range be?
Yeah. There's no magic number, and it really does depend on the research that you've done. It does start to look weird when the range is two, though, right? So you do want to have a narrow range. I would say probably within $15,000 is probably typical. If it's, well, I'd take anywhere between 60,000 to 120, that starts to look odd. So trying to narrow the range, but your research is really going to be what guides that, because there's so much variability. Public health involves so many different types of employers and so many different types of jobs. So really focusing on your research, and I can't encourage you enough to ask your network, because that will help you know what's more typical for your specific field.
So the one of the questions in the Q&A is how what do you put on a job application form when it asks for numeric value and you can't leave it blank, you can't type in open to discussion? What do you do if you have to type it in?
Right. Okay. And for some federal agencies, of course, you have to put in how much you made at each job. It's really important not to lie, just in general. But it's important to be honest. So if you're talking about past salary, you don't really want to talk about it because you want to be based on this job, not your past job. But sometimes you have to do your research on the front end, and you don't want to price yourself out, but you don't want to lowball yourself. So when it comes to applications like that, I think they are occurring less. Yeah, I don't know. You all are looking for jobs. You tell me. I think there's more of an awareness with many companies that that's maybe not best practice, but if they say, what are your salary, needs for this job, you try to put somewhere in the middle, right? Or if you try to do your research on the front end and do some ranges as well.
Okay, we could go back to the chat and just kind of go back and forth.
Yes.
How do you negotiate a salary for promotion when your supervisor says there's no room for that because HR does it all? I think maybe they're getting at the supervisors kind of blaming it on HR.
Right. And still keeping it very friendly and say, okay, that sounds wonderful. I'd be happy to speak with somebody in HR. Do you know who I should reach out to? And really trying to get to the bottom of it. Again, assertive, friendly, professional, and keeping asking. And that might be that they're probably not telling you something incorrect, but they might be telling you, okay, well, I don't handle that. I understand. I totally respect that. Who does? And so you're connected with the right people.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I hope that changes with jobs you're filling out too. Good. Okay, so speaking another language that is used for the company. Yeah, this is very difficult when language is a barrier, and there's many barriers if you have never negotiated for a job before, right? So I would just keep in mind, you keep your professionalism. You're speaking in whatever, of course, talking about whatever people have, what the company expects. So whatever they are asking of you, whatever language you applied in, and the interview was in, you keep with that language, and you keep moving forward with it. Okay, I love this question. Okay, so somebody was talking about never negotiated before. How should I approach leadership for a salary increase with added workload? Right? So I'm expected to take on strategies, and this often does happen as you're in the job. So perhaps you didn't negotiate salary in the beginning for whatever reason, and you're like, now I should really be asking for more money. A good thing to do with salary negotiation is trying to tie it in with an annual evaluation, because you're having the discussion and you're able to prove not work that you will be doing, perhaps necessarily. Often with annual evaluations, you want to make sure that you are armed with everything that you have done. And different workplaces are very different. Many workplaces, it's a little bit more loosey-goosey. In my workplace, every time I breathe, I write it down. I'm just kidding, but academics, the CVs are super long. So keeping a really detailed record of what you did throughout the year. I like to sometimes type up my list of things to do. And at the end of the year, I go back to those. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. I did that. And that was really important for the organization. So keeping track of what you have done. And it is very important to ask for money, not just because you've been there. Well, I've been here for 6 months. I've been here for a year. Where's my raise? When you negotiate, you bring the value you bring to them. So keeping track of everything you've done, and you're talking about the workload and the teaching of the courses and the mentoring, keeping track of that. And then when the evaluation comes, then that's part of the process, because some employers aren't able to discuss salary until that point. But that's when more employers are able to offer salary or take it up. Maybe they can't, but you ask how it can be taken up to the next level, because sometimes people don't realize how much you're doing. And we take on, and we are showing value, and then we present it at the right moment. And that often is the annual evaluation. So coming to your evaluations prepared is so, so important.
There's another question. Somebody's an intern and they've been offered a full-time position. So what do they do in that case? Because the work might be somewhat the same.
Yes. That's fantastic, because they like you. Talk about leverage. You've interned, they like you, they're offering you a full-time position. That's very good. So when they make the job offer, sometimes it can be something that people talk about. We'd like to offer you this job. That sounds wonderful, but they don't talk about salary yet. And you're like, when are they gonna bring it up? You wait, right? Until they're going to be dealing with money at some point. So whenever the job offer is there, then you talk about salary, right? And then again, making sure you do your research. Just because you've interned for them before, that doesn't mean that you're going to be doing the same thing. You're going to probably have added responsibilities. So look at that job title. You are in a good position to perhaps use some of your networking to know what entry level folks are getting. And sometimes people are like, well, they say that that's what they offer, but I know that somebody actually got hired for $5,000 more than that last year. That's very valuable information. And if it is a government job, many times that's public record. You can look up salaries, and it's public record, it's taxpayer funds. And so there's records that you can look up. You can know the last person who was hired as a food safety specialist within that county health department. You come to the table knowing that information, right? So using your network and don't just think because you're the intern, you're going to be paid a little bit more if it was a paid internship. Really treat it like a brand new job in salary negotiation, is my advice.
All right. I think we have time for one more, and then we're at the top of the hour. Let's see.
Okay, I tried to get to the one most of the ones in the chat, or at least the ideas behind it.
Yeah, looks like we covered most of them. That's great. Well, this has been super helpful. What a wonderful presentation. So I just want to take the opportunity to thank you for everybody that got to participate today and folks that'll watch the recorded version. So we'd love to have you back again, Laura, to do something similar at a future date. So good luck to everybody on the call. I'm glad you got to participate and hope you found this to be helpful. All
Thanks so
right.
much.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.